Welcome back to Unstuck TV. John Polish and I are talking about the next conference and what's in it for attendees. And I just talked about my book, and now it's your turn. So first, hold up the book. Display it proudly.
I was told it was always better to hold it in front of a model.
What? No.
But you're saying here?
I'll find one for you.
Okay.
Yeah, right next to it. There. Smile.
I'm going to look like... I don't want to... Let's not get political right now.
All right. So tell us about your book.
My book, The 40 Strategies to Living Unstuck. It's very interesting how I came up with this book. I use a lot of props in my speeches, and I really liked the points that I made with the props. And at one point I went through and looked at my speech and there's like a congruency missing. There's something missing. And so I literally sat down and came up with the strategies, and it was originally just a way to keep the props. To be honest. As I look at it, though, what I realize is that they're strategies I'd been using my whole life.
Okay.
And it was just 4 things that you can do to get unstuck. The first, deal with your unmet expectations. So most of what we go through have to do with our expectations. The second was defining your ideals, which really comes into play when you're stuck. Most of the time, what we wanted is no longer available to us, so we have to redefine what we want.
Okay.
Because if we continue to want what we can't have, continue to not get what you want, right?
Seems reasonable.
The third one is develop your faith, and that one has been very interesting. I've gotten reviews on my book about it being way too religious. It's not at all, I don't think. The fact that I say develop your faith, I think people read the cover and then write about it.
Right.
What I'm actually talking about is that belief that things can work out. Okay. And so there's different strategies on how you can gain confidence in knowing that things will work out. And the last D is drive on. That's about persevering under any circumstances, being able to recognize the difference between a roadblock and a detour.
Okay.
So the roadblock is when that goal that you're after is no longer available. The detour, it's still available, but it's going to take you longer to get there, and you're going to have to go through some things first. Go down some dirt roads. Learn a thing or two before you get there.
Okay.
So that's the book. And I've been challenged recently to really come up with a training program for people. Mm-hmm. So I have developed the 40 Strategies to Living Unstuck training program, and I have it for personal and for corporate.
Okay.
And what I looked at was the people that I want to work with are people who are stuck. They're dealing with something that's keeping them from reaching their goals. And I realized that most of those people have jobs.
Okay.
And so
most people have jobs.
If
so
you're stuck in your
on.
personal life,
mm-hmm.
you're bringing that to work.
Okay.
Right? And so from a company perspective, if they're not hitting their goals, then there's a lot in here that can teach the company or organization how to move forward and meet your goals.
Okay.
By the same token, if we have a bunch of people working for us who are stuck in their personal life, that's gonna carry over into the workplace. They're gonna mm-hmm. miss work more often, they're gonna be less productive. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of issues that go with that. Mm-hmm. So this training program, I think, is a great way to look at life from a different perspective, gain a little bit of that emotional intelligence needed to be able to manage expectations and reach your goals much faster.
I know you said anybody that's stuck, but who's the perfect person to read this?
For the book itself?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who's starting to lose hope.
Okay.
That moment when you feel like things aren't never going to work out for me, or, why does this always happen? I realized at one point that I had to stop asking why me and start asking what am I supposed to do with this? Mm-hmm. So that moment you find yourself asking why me, why is this happening? Grab the book.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, that's going from being a victim to taking responsibility.
Yeah. There are things in here. I talk in here about how I consider it a go-to emotion.
Okay.
And I learned this through experimenting with different people. I would put out different emotions, okay. And they would read about one of their expectations. So something that they can go right, and then instantly place it on the emotion that they first thought of. What I learned is that the people around the room all had piles that were bigger than others. For example, I had more frustration.
Okay.
Somebody across from me had a large pile in depression, but nothing in frustration. So what that taught me is that I'm prone to get frustrated when something doesn't work out. The person across from me never gets frustrated, but they get depressed.
Right.
So now I realize that frustration is kind of a go-to emotion for me. So when I start to feel frustrated, I instantly check myself. What's the expectation that's not being met here? Mm-hmm. How important is that expectation now? How important is it going to be in an hour, in a day, in a week? How much do I actually have to concentrate on going through this process? Because there are some times when we get stuck and it just works itself out. Other times when it takes a concentrated effort to overcome. But the process is still very much the same. Just sometimes it's a bit of an innate process. It just kind of happens. So
very nice. And I think that's whether you're stuck in your personal life, whether you're stuck in your job, whether you're depressed, whether you've got any of the stories that our speakers have dealt with, the process to getting out of it is usually the same.
Very much the same.
Yeah.
And that was actually the basis for the Learning to Live Unstuck documentary we're doing. And it was after watching a couple of the Unstuck conferences and seeing these people who have tremendously different stories, but still the answers were very much the same. This is what I did, and I took the first step, then I took the next step. This is how I managed to pick myself up.
Right.
And I looked at it and like, man, in order for this to happen, there's a process. And so while there's nothing new, like you said, I don't think there's any one thing in here that's new.
Right.
I think putting it in a process in a system like this is new. I honestly don't believe that there's another system out there that's like this. However, each of the pieces of it, are things we've always known. It's just a matter of how do I do this? What's the order? And it works.
Yeah.
I know it works because in the past couple of months, I've read my own book twice.
Yeah.
Because I've needed it. I still get stuck.
Yep, I get that advice all the time. Like, I'm depressed, I'm having a rough day. Oh, there's a book out there on resiliency. Maybe you should pick it up. Like, God.
Probably the best compliment I got after reading my book. Somebody said, that was a really great book. I'd like to meet the person that wrote it. I was like, gee, thanks. Meaning that, we still go through this. This is my own process that has worked for me, and it has to continue to work for me. I have to keep going back to it. And I have.
And I think, you learn with every new challenge, you learn something new and you find another strategy that can help you through it. So that's why we keep doing these conferences, because we're all learning and everybody has some challenge that they have to face.
I approached 4 different producers with the movie idea. And the first 4 all said the same thing. They're like, well, their stories are so different. It doesn't make sense. So, like, why would we do this? And I'm like, I walked away just dumbfounded. Like, how do you not see the connection?
Yeah.
And then I pitched it to Dana, who's doing it with us. And he was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. And then he sat through a conference with us and was like, this is it. This is going to be amazing. Because he can see, like, all the different stories really were, your story of your marriage, the process was not much different than Eddie Garcia's story of losing both hands and feet.
Exactly.
Like, you don't have anything in common when it comes to your tragedies.
Right.
But that process, there's a lot in common.
Yeah, the underlying emotion, that hitting rock bottom is something that everybody has or will or is currently experiencing. And you can learn. You can learn from other people and make your journey a little bit less painful.
I used to think that the most successful people in the world were really lucky and got good breaks. Now I realize that they face the same tragedies we face. They learn to pivot quicker.
Yeah.
While a lot of us are still staring at our problem, wondering where it all went wrong, they've turned and moved in a new direction. And that's why they get there quicker than we do.
There's this amazing quote. There's a band called Satsang that I've started listening to. Kind of reggae. It's positive stuff. But the singer said, what if all this stuff didn't happen to you? What if it happened for you?
There you go.
Mic drop.
So anyway, you can find out more about the training program and book at johnpolish.com. The conference coming up at unstuckconferences.com. If you're in the Houston area, I expect to see you. If not, do us a favor, tell everyone you know in Houston that they have to be at this event September 29th.
Perfect. We'll see you there.
Alrighty, thanks.
Okay.